Boy, can I identify with Martha. You know, those of us who live in Michigan usually do an open house for our kids when they graduate from high school, don't we? They don't do that in every state, so if I tell this story in some states, they don't quite get what I'm talking about, but you understand. And because we usually have a heads up that our kids are going to graduate, we can plan ahead. And we know that we're going to invite the relatives and our kids' friends and some of our church family. We plan ahead, and we might paint the living room. And we might budget for a new couch if the old one has holes in it. And we might plant annuals so that the guests who are coming to the open house think we always live this graciously. And before our daughter graduated from high school, we had just moved into a beautiful old historic house downtown that I had wanted for a lot of years before we were able to buy it. And I was so excited for her open house so that we could have that party there. And I had a long to-do list, including planting annuals before that party. Now, 2 weeks before the party, my husband had an aerator go through the backyard to poke holes in the ground. I didn't know aerating before he did that, but it lets water soak into the ground and nutrients, so I learned something. And then 1 week before the party, we hired some of Amber's boy friends to come and plant annuals and do yard work. And at the lunchtime, I had a picnic for those kids. And afterwards, I was standing in the driveway admiring the work that had been accomplished. Don't you just love admiring work that you've dictated? And that's what I was doing. I just was so enjoying that. And Josh, our son Josh, was on the John Deere lawn tractor, and he was mowing the lawn. It's quite a deep lawn. And he was out there on the tractor, and suddenly, quack, it sounded like he hit a rock. And in the next moment, crack, it felt like the rock hit the inside of my calf. And I looked down, and to my shock, it wasn't a rock at all. It was a long, crooked piece of hurricane fence with a loop on the end of it. And it must have been stuck in the ground for years, but when the aerator went through, it had pulled that buried piece of hurricane fence just high enough for the blade of the mower to catch it, and had flown it like a dirty, crooked arrow through the air, and it had gone in my calf, and I could feel it protruding on the other side. I screamed loudly, loud enough for my husband and the neighbor to come. And Graydon got me to the hospital, and it hurt a lot more coming out than it did going in. Missed the bone, but it tore muscles, and I was on crutches. Well, it was such a terrible time to get hurt. Not only did it hurt, but I had this big party a week later, and I was incapacitated. And I had this long to-do list. I wasn't worried about the food. I had a dear friend who was a caterer, and she was helping me with that, but I had so many things to accomplish, and I am ashamed to tell you that week my family met a creature they'd never met before. The open house was on Sunday, and on Saturday, that list was still long. And my husband had stained the entire deck, which was on a couple levels, and he had done other things, and he was tired. And after supper, the children, who had been avoiding me at all costs throughout the week, they ate their supper and disappeared. My husband likes to watch the evening news on 2 channels. He'll watch it on one, tape it on another, get double perspective while he reads the newspaper. And I was sort of envying the fact that he was sitting in the lounge chair with his feet up when I would have loved to have my wounded leg up. And I was sitting on the couch trying to appreciate the news, but I noticed that the spots on the family room carpeting, even though I had asked 3 people in that family to de-spot that carpeting, During the last 2 days, no one had done it. And as I watched that newsreel, those spots got larger and larger and larger. And we're really not supposed to talk during the news hour that my husband enjoys so much, but I just couldn't bear not to bring it up. And so I did comment on it. I just can't believe that even though I asked 3 people in this family to de-spot this carpeting, nobody did. And he didn't lower the paper. And so I felt I should comment on it 2 more times. And he didn't respond. And in exasperation, I thought, I will just do this myself. And so I hobbled into the kitchen, and I got the Resolve carpet cleaner, and I hooked it over my crutch, and I got my little empty ice cream bucket and put a little water in the bottom, and I got my rag, and I sloshed my way back into the living room. And I know that Graydon loves me. And I thought, surely, if he sees me in my wounded condition on the floor trying to scrub these spots, that he will put me in the lounge chair and he will listen to the news while he de-spots the carpeting. And so I lowered myself to the floor and I started scrubbing, and I waited for him to notice me. And he didn't lower the paper. And I thought, perhaps if I add sound effects. And so I spritzed the carpet. And finally, he lowered the paper. And I waited, and he said, "Jennie, you are pitiful." Pitiful. I have stained the entire deck today, among other things. I am exhausted. I intend to read my paper and watch the news tonight. If you think this rug is dirty now, wait till 200 people eat on it tomorrow. However, if you want to dramatically drag yourself across the carpeting in your condition and clean it, then, honey, go right ahead. And so I did. I went upstairs that night in a terrible snit. I didn't allow one spot of my body to touch his, especially my wounded leg. And on the eve of the day that I wanted to honor my daughter for her wonderful accomplishments, I had a horrible night. I woke up miserable. I reached for the crutches to go to the bathroom, and they fell over. And I reached and got a cramp in that leg. And you know, as I was gritting my teeth, I don't think I've ever had a tantrum in my whole life, but I had a tantrum that morning. And it was against the Lord. I said, "Why did you let this happen this week? Why? You know, when we bought this house, we dedicated it to you. We walked through every single room. I wanted to be a blessing today. I wanted to just invite people in and be a blessing. I wanted to be a blessing. I wanted to show off. I wanted to show off." Do you know, all those people who were coming to our home would walk in that day and they would see the lovely Dimkoff family. And they'd say, "Oh, what a lovely home. And lovely Christian family." Aren't they something? And you know, the mother, she travels and speaks and inspires women to be godly women. And my kids could roll their eyes. Wouldn't they just love a mother like her? While I've been getting ready for just this wonderful party to honor my daughter, I had been sinning all week long.